Have you ever wondered, amid the chaos of war, what's more terrifying than the enemy's gunfire? It isn't the bombs, it isn't hunger, it isn't the crushing loneliness of a battlefield half a world away. The most terrifying thing is the silence. The silence between battles when the gunfire fades and only the wind whispers through the leaves. That's when the stories begin, the ones that soldiers never tell out loud. Imagine this. It's 1944. You're a soldier, deep in the jungles of Luzon, Philippines. Torrential rain pours from a sky you haven't seen in days. The ground beneath your boots is a soup of mud and rot. The air reeks of damp leaves, gunpowder, and sour sweat. Above you, a canopy of monstrous trees knits together into a suffocating green roof that blocks out the sun, trapping everything below in a sickly, dim twilight. The jungle devours every sound. Your squad's footsteps sink into the muck with heavy, muffled thuds. The insects never stop. Their endless cheering builds into a feverish chorus. And somewhere far away, you think you can still hear the distant echoes of war. But this isn't the story of that war, the one in the history books. This is the story of Squad Bravo, 37th Infantry Division, United States Army. 8 men, 8 lives. Gone without a trace. The official report says only missing in action, presumed dead. A single cold line to end 8 human stories. But what if I told you the truth was far worse? That what killed them wasn't the Japanese. That on their final night, their radio broadcast something impossible. Something that sent chills down the spines of hardened officers. Their leader was Lieutenant Robert Hayes, 24 years old. His blonde hair was already streaked with gray from too many sleepless nights. Hayes was a practical man. He believed in orders, maps, and his trusty M1 Garand. He didn't believe in ghosts. To him, the only real enemies in this jungle were the Japanese and malaria. Behind him marched 7 others. Miller, the giant who cursed at everything but screamed at snakes. Davis, the frail radio operator from Ohio who treated his radio like a lifeline. Santiago, the quiet Mexican soldier who fingered his old rosary whenever the night grew too still. 7 men, each with their own fears, but united by one purpose: survive and make it home. Their mission was simple on paper: track down a retreating Japanese unit said to be carrying vital documents deep in the northern mountains of Luzon. A straightforward assignment, at least until they reached hell. To guide them, command assigned a local named Mateo, a small, sun-weathered man with eyes like dark wells and a silence that made everyone uneasy. His English was broken, but his knowledge of the jungle was unmatched. He showed them which plants could stop bleeding, which streams held clean water, and which paths to avoid. For 2 days, everything went as planned. They crossed rivers, climbed ridges, waded through swamps that reeked of decay. The air was thick, damp, and electric with tension. Danger lurked behind every vine, every shadow, but the enemy never appeared. Then came the 3rd day. They reached the edge of a valley unlike any they had seen. The trees here were older, colossal trunks draped in moss and vines that twisted in grotesque patterns. The air grew colder. The insects fell silent. A heavy, unnatural stillness settled over them. Mateo froze, his face drained of color. He pointed ahead and stammered in broken English. No go there. Bad place. Vung come. Forbidden. Hayes frowned. Forbidden? What do you mean forbidden? The map says this is the fastest route. Mateo shook his head violently. Spirit? Forest spirit. Doesn't like strangers. Doesn't like guns. Miller laughed it off. Forest spirit? Hell, the only spirits I believe in come in a bottle. But Hayes noticed something in Mateo's eyes, a raw, primal fear. The kind of fear that doesn't come from superstition, but from memory. Still, orders were orders. Turning back wasn't an option. Hayes gave Mateo a few cans of rations and told him he could return to camp. Mateo nodded, backed away slowly, and vanished into the trees without another word, like a shadow swallowed by the forest. Bravo Squad pressed on into the valley. The deeper they went, the stronger the unease grew. The trees here didn't look right, twisted into shapes that resembled bodies frozen in agony. On their bark were strange symbols, carved deep, unlike any writing they'd ever seen. Davis spoke up, voice trembling. Lieutenant, the radio's acting up. Just static, but sometimes I swear I hear whispering. Hayes snatched the receiver. Only static. Get a grip, Davis. You're exhausted. But even Hayes felt it. The pressure in the air, the weight of unseen eyes watching them from every direction. Eyes that weren't human, eyes that belonged to something older. They stumbled upon what was left of a Japanese encampment. 5 tents, a dead campfire, spent shells, and empty canteens. Everything looked orderly, abandoned in haste, but there were no bodies, no signs of a fight, and on the muddy ground beside the boot prints were other tracks, massive ones. deeply pressed into the earth. Not human, not animal. The tracks led straight into a sheer rock wall and stopped. Night fell. But in this valley, darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was alive, thick, suffocating. They set up camp, barely speaking. Fear moved among them like a living thing. Santiago sat alone, whispering prayers under his breath. Miller, once the loudest, now sat silent, clutching his rifle tight. They thought they were alone. They were wrong. That night, hell opened its jaws. The darkness didn't bring rest, it brought torment. They huddled close around a small fire that barely pierced the black. The jungle around them was no longer silent. Something moved out there. Twigs snapped. Leaves rustled though no wind blew. And then came the breathing. Low, guttural, like the sound of something enormous drawing air through wet lungs. "What the hell is that?" whispered Peterson, the youngest. "Probably a boar," Hayes muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Around midnight, Miller, who was on watch, vanished. No scream, no struggle. He was simply gone. When his relief found the empty post, panic erupted. They found Miller's rifle lying in the mud, a smear of blood nearby, and those same massive footprints leading in from the forest straight to where Miller had stood and back out again. This wasn't the Japanese. The Japanese fought. They shouted. They bled. Whatever this was, it hunted in silence. At dawn, they discovered another horror. Not far from camp lay the missing Japanese soldiers. 5 of them. Dead. But not from bullets. Their bodies were intact, but shriveled, mummified, faces frozen in unspeakable terror. Weapons scattered. Some rifles empty, aimed blindly into the trees. They had fought something they couldn't see. "Oh dear God," whispered Santiago, crossing himself again and again. It took their souls. No one doubted Mateo now. They were trapped inside something's domain, something ancient and vengeful. Orders no longer mattered. The war no longer mattered. Only one mission remained: get out alive. Hayes ordered an immediate retreat. They left nearly everything behind: supplies, packs, even the tent. They ran, following the path that had brought them in. But the jungle had changed. Landmarks shifted. Paths disappeared. The forest moved. No matter how far they went, they always seemed to circle back to the same cursed valley. It was as if the jungle itself was toying with them. Then Davis's radio came alive. The static vanished, replaced by chaos, heavy breathing, the clatter of metal, the crunch of footsteps, mirroring their own. It was broadcasting them, but from somewhere else, like someone running beside them in the dark. Then a voice, Miller's voice, panicked, trembling. Open quote, "They're coming. God, they're everywhere. It's not the Japanese," close quote. The transmission exploded into a roar, inhuman, deafening, a sound that didn't belong in this world. They dropped to their knees, covering their ears, hearts pounding as that scream tore through the jungle. Then came another voice, rasping, ancient, dripping with malice. It whispered in a language no one recognized, yet every syllable filled them with despair. And then, silence. The signal died. That was the last anyone heard from Bravo's squad. Weeks later, a search team was sent. They found nothing but fragments: a dented helmet, a crushed canteen, Davis's shattered radio beneath the roots of an ancient tree. No bodies, no signs of struggle. 8 American soldiers had simply vanished. The report was filed away, forgotten, one of countless wartime mysteries buried beneath red tape and time. World War II in the jungles of the Philippines claimed thousands of missing men. Bravo Squad became just another statistic. But the story didn't die. Years after the war, when peace had returned, villagers living at the foot of the northern mountains still spoke of the Forbidden Valley, a place the forest spirits ruled. They said the jungle never forgave those who brought war into its heart. American or Japanese, it made no difference. To the forest, they were all trespassers. An old man who had been a boy during the war once said, open quote, "On stormy nights when the wind howls through the trees, you can still hear it, the sound from that valley. Not the roar of demons, but singing. A sad song in a foreign tongue." They say it's the American soldiers, still there, singing their anthem in the rain, still on patrol, a patrol that never ends, close quote. So what was the truth? Were they ambushed by the Japanese, their story twisted into legend? Or was something older, something beyond human comprehension, waiting in those shadows long before any war began? We'll never truly know, but one thing's certain. The file may be closed, the war long over, but deep in the jungles of Luzon, the story of Bravo Squad's final patrol is still whispered. And if one day you find yourself walking those same trails and you hear faint singing carried on the rain, remember this: some wars never really end.